There are lots of software out there to make logos, overlays, thumbnails, all that kind of stuff. Most of them cost money, but the open source community offers some hella comparable alternatives to things like Adobe Photoshop and Affinity Designer. I've used Krita since 2018, and it's my favorite piece of software to make my stuff in. It even appeared in my building and content creation toolbox, linked above, where I sung many a praise about it. Even though it's geared primarily towards digital painting, it's very competent in graphic design too. In fact, every logo you've seen in the last 2 years was made in Krita. So today I'll go over the basics of Krita and the process of making my logos and teach you how to use this free piece of software to make your stuff. Before we start, I'd like to mention that I stream on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We usually talk about what's on people's minds, and we also do talk about technical stuff, tech stuff, graphic design, basically any aspect of content creation that I talk about on this channel. We talk about it there. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, then join us for that. Link to that will be down below. All right, so I'm on the main page for Krita. Now the rest of this is gonna be done pretty much impromptu. So if I mess up, it's not scripted. But anyway, I'm here on the main page of Krita, and it's actually available for many platforms. In fact, it's available for all platforms. It's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So the reason why Krita is so important to me, why I chose to do it, is because I've been trying to make Linux my daily driver. In fact, you're looking at my desktop for Linux right now. And I want to work on Linux because I think Linux is a better platform for Windows, and the fact that I can find everything that I need, more or less, on Linux is great. But anyway, I'm rambling on. So the features you get with it, I'm gonna do a bit of a run over of what the features is that. Clean and flexible interface, I guess that's a talking point. One of the favorite things that people like about Krita is that it's easy to use, and I can really attest to that. Things are very streamlined, very smooth, which says a lot about a KDE program. KDE is known for a lot of bloat, and Krita has had bloat in the past, but not to the extent that other ones have. And of course, you see right here is very much includes the tools for digital painting. It's not really designed with graphic design in mind, but as mentioned, it's very competent with it. It's also all that other crap. You can also animate in Krita. If you want to do Flash animations and you can't get Adobe Flash, you can make it in Krita. Krita is supportive of that, which is funny because Adobe doesn't want anything to do with Flash anymore, which is sad. But anyway, you can do that. This scene from My Neighbor Totoro was animated in Krita and edited together in HitFilm Express. I'm not going to show the video because it's copyrighted, but the video is cool. It shows exactly how good Krita is when it comes to its capabilities. Also sees all those other things, OpenGL, full color management. One of Krita's, not really claim to fame, but one of its biggest features is that it is supportive of, it uses OpenColor.io, which is basically, it's an API, basically what it is an API for input and output of color spaces. So what it allows to do, when we get into the meat and potatoes of how we use Krita and what it's capable of, we'll get into a little bit of the color management, because it's not really important for the thing that you be doing for content creation. It's just more important that you learn that, yes, there are color spaces available, and if you need that kind of high level stuff, you can use it, which is what I'm trying to say. And it's free. It's completely 100% free. You don't have to pay a single thing for it. If you want to support them, you can donate, but Krita is a free piece of software, which is fantastic. All right, so we're in Krita, and when you open the program for the first time, you'll be greeted with this splash screen. If you have news, if you check for updates, but I probably should have this open right here. This is like Krita 4.3.0 has been released. Krita is actually on a pretty good version right now. Not that matters, but when you open it up, you have the splash screen. I already have some stuff already made in here, so that's just stuff that would appear your installation if you have stuff already made. But at this point, I'm assuming you don't. So let's create a new file. Let's make it a 1920 by 1080 image. And what we're going to be doing here is that over the course of learning how to use Krita, we'll be making two things. We'll be making a basic logo, and we'll be making a basic overlay. Now, by overlay, I mean camera box, because that's just as simple as you can get it and the easiest you can get for an overlay. So for this one, I always use 1920 by 1080 because that gives me the best resolution that I can use, that I can scale to my will. That's usually how I found to work the best. So we open it up, and so for the first time, if you open up a new project, you see several panels. You have your tools to the left, layers and other tool options to the right, and tertiary tool options to the top. Usually what I do when I'm making logos is I turn off the default background layer that the program creates, because that is nothing that I need. I want this background. Now, when you're using any type of creative software, The checkerboard background always indicates transparency. It always indicates alpha, and you want that. Alpha basically is just a third color color thing that basically allows things that are above it to appear behind it. It's kind of like it's basically the way transparency works in creative and videography. So we'll start with a basic box. We'll just start a basic box, and we'll go over to our rectangle tool. Now, here's a few things that you may want to take note of. You want to take note of the size of the width. Basically, what this indicates is the size of the brush. And I don't like how it sets it to 50 pixels by default. I'd rather have 10 pixels. But also, you also need to pay attention to your brush. Every tool that draws an image will be affected by the brush presets. Sorry, hiccup there. Now, I would rather keep it to something like this. Pencil tilted. Get you that kind of image. But you don't want that. Most people don't want that. So what I typically use, so once you have your rectangle selected and on layer you want to put it on, because you got to remember in Krita, everything is layer dependent. Because when you put things on one layer, it affects everything that is on that layer. So if you create a new image, if you create a new image or a new asset or part or whatever you want to call it, you need to put it on a different layer to make them independent from each other. But for right now, let's draw the box. Right, we have a box. We have a little red box that we can encase our camera or viewport or whatever you want to call it into. But that's not all we want to do. We want to do some funky stuff to it. So I'm gonna get my brush tool, go back to my brush presets, and let's just say I wanted to use a creased brush, a dry creased brush. I go over to this. Actually, I'm gonna make a different color. Make it a green. All right, right there we have a box. I mean, it is very basic, but that's not the point of this video. Is to show you how to use Krita. It's not really a video saying like, hey, this is how you make the best logos and overlays in the world. Because I would definitely consider myself not to be good enough to say, okay, this is how you make the best looking overlay. I want to get you familiar with the basic software that is free, that allows you to practice and make your own. There's plenty of other videos out there to tell you how to make a better overlay or a better logo, but none of them really tell you how to use it in software, kind of like Krita. There are some, yes, but not a whole lot. Anyway, so we have a basic camera border. So if I go back to my layers, but before we get into layer styles, I wanted to make mention of something that is kind of rather important. And this is this tool right here, eraser mode. Obviously, if you want to erase a mistake that you've made while using this, you can use the eraser mode. And all it will do is just erase, it will erase mistakes. Now here's the kind of cool thing about Krita, is that it is tool dependent. So if you were to use the circle tool, and then go over it like this, it erases within the perimeter of the tool, like that. Now, if you want to erase large sections of an image, this is great. However, it's still dependent. If you use the rectangle tool, it only erases the perimeter or the edges of the rectangle, not with what's encased within it. If you want to erase kind of specific parts and that are in parallel to each other, this is great. Oh, you want to erase some more polygonal images? You can use the polygon tool. Like that. You can erase specific parts, but in a line. Like Krita is very full of very good features that make it one of the best softwares out there. I think that you can use for graphic design. All right, so now we got a box here, a very basic box, yes, but we have a box. So what I would go for at this point is maybe a layer style. So how do you get a layer style? We right click on one layer. Layer styles will be right here. So you get several options. You get blending options, which is basic. You get drop shadow, inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, bevel and emboss, and contour and texture, which are only available if you have bevel and emboss turned on. Satin, texture, overlay, grain overlay, pattern overlay, and stroke. For the purposes of this video, I'm only going to be focusing on outer glow and stroke. So if I want to turn on outer glow, turn that on, you get a glow. Now you can't see it too well, so I'm going to turn it to a different color, like this kind of like maybe a Spurgeon Gamer blue. How about that? Aspie blue. And you can't see it too well, but if I turn up the opacity to max, turn up the spread a little bit more, wait for it to load, you see now that we got some color going on. Oh. Turn up the spread and size a little bit more. A little bit more. There. Now we have a better looking camera border. This camera border, again, it's not fancy. I'm just trying to teach you the basics of the program rather than teaching you how to create something that's completely out of your league. We have something good looking. Now, if I wanted to add a stroke, I could, and I can actually add it as a gradient. Now, I should have a gradient already saved here. No, I don't. So, something cool about Krita is that, actually, you know what? That actually looks a lot worse than I thought it did. So, something cool about Krita is that the glow can have a gradient, and you can actually create custom gradients. So, if you wanted to make a custom gradient, you click on the foreground transparent button, go to add, and then click on both of these buttons where you can add some in between to create even more complex gradients. So if I wanted to create a gradient that was blue, but also maybe kind of a shade of purple, I create the gradient, and it is applied to the image. That kind of looks kind of weird, so I'm going to turn down the spread and size of the gradient, or the glow rather. Now, there you go. We have a decent looking camera overlay. Very decent looking one. And it's kind of hard, it's very subtle, but it's actually kind of there. You can see it's very subtle. If you zoom in further, you can see the overlay, or the gradient kind of overlaid kind of in a more linear fashion. So let's just say you wanted to add something a little different, something a little bit more complex that basic Krita can't do for you. That's where GMI-QT comes in. So if you go to filters, start GMI-QT, this comes up. So GMI-QT is a plugin for Krita, specifically for Krita, which is, if you're not familiar with Gmic, Gmic is a plugin for many pieces of software in the open source community. It's available for GIMP, Glimpse. I think there's also a version for Blender of all things, that basically allows you to make special effects. Gmic actually just stands for Gracie's Magic for Image Computing. And Gmic normally is a command line piece of software. It does not normally have an interface like this. That is what the QT is about. So Gmic QT is the command line version of Gmic that has a graphical interface. So this makes using Gmic a whole lot more easy. But let's just say you wanted to add some lights and shadows. So you want to add, say, like a light ray. But let's just say, for example, you wanted to add, say, a 3D block. This is something you can do in Gmic QT for Gmic QT. This is where things get really cool. So resolution, you can add it, you can bring it up a little bit more, bring up a little bit more. Say like that, and you wanted to make it smoothness. Make it like that. So let's say, for example, you want to say like a wire map like this. This is one of the coolest effects I think is with that Gmic offers. Completely 100%. You can change them to color, like that. You can transport black and white, like that. That's what I'm going to keep it as, because we want to keep that transparent and alpha background within it. You can add more segments. I'm going to keep it back to 0. Actually can't do that. There we go. Black and white. There. But this is, I would say, probably a very cool looking overlay. And if I go back to layer styles and change it back to, say, normal black and white. So right here, you have a pretty cool looking webcam border. You have some, I would say, like if I wasn't so attached to my stuff, I'd use this. I would use this definitely. But how would one export something like this? Well, I would turn off the background first and go to save as. Save as simply. Nope, I went public. I want pictures. So Krita uses its own in-house format for project files called CRAW. I have a few right here. What I always do is I always do double duty. I save it in a project file with CRAW, and my final file is the same as the final file. It's how you always want to do this kind of thing. But for this purpose, I'll use a CRAW, so wireframe. I'll save it as a CRAW. Then once again, I'll save it as a PNG image. This is what you want, PNG image. Save as a wireframe. Store alpha transparency, that's what I want. And I can go in to OBS, image, just add the image, browse, back to pictures, back to this. Now, because this is on Linux, I can't add my camera, but this is basically something that I would use. This is actually a kind of a solid looking wireframe camera border. I would use this. Now, the other part of things that you can do is making logos. Now, logos are relatively simple, so rather than going over the entire process of making one completely from scratch, I'm going to show you. So for the purpose of this video, I'll just focus on showing how I made the A logo which is a very basic way of doing it. So I'm gonna make a new image, 1920 by 1080 again. Turn off the background layer, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make a circle primitive here, and I'm going to change the color to say kind of like a dark gray. Make the circle. There you go. I have a circle now, which is a funny way of saying it, but that's how it is. So from once I have the circle, go back to layer style, and I turn on the stroke style. I make the color kind of lime bright green, kind of that kind of color. All right, so now that I have the color, and I actually don't want it this big. I actually want it 19 pixels. So I have the color now, and now I don't change anything else apart from the color and the size of it. And the opacity. The opacity needs to be up to 100% because I don't like that kind of opaque transparency that it always defaults to. I have that. So now I'm going to do something really cool. I go to my transform tool, go to tool options, and I turn on the warp mode. I take this corner, move it around until I have it kind of more linear with itself. There you go. What I just did there was warp the image. Now, this is one of the coolest things that Krita can do. The transform tool has also a few other modes. It has perspective, which basically transforms the image based on the perspective that you're seeing. It's a little confusing, a little hard to get used to at first. The cage will basically place a cage around the image, and it will manipulate it based on that. Liquify, same thing. All these tools manipulate the image based on your perspective. They're all perspective based. But for this purposes, we'll keep it to warped. So after that, I go to my text generator, and what I only do for this is that I just type A. That's all I do. Type A, and I use the font Ubuntu Regular. Make the size like this. All right, so the font size does not get it quite large enough. But basically, what my settings are is I use Ubuntu font, a font, and if you're not using Linux or even Ubuntu for that matter, you won't have this particular font family installed by default. So for that purpose, I'll have linked down below the font family link that go from Canonical's official website, which by the way, Canonical makes Ubuntu. Well, they make Ubuntu, and they've released the font for you to use for free. You do not have to attribute anyone for using this font. It's completely 100% free. If you want to use it for your own stuff, the link to that will be down below. So I have Ubuntu. It needs to be regular. It's size at least 72 with this kind of color. Now, if you want the color science, I actually can't get it here. So that's what I use it for. Now, this A is too small for my use, so I'm gonna blow it up a little bit here. Nope, I didn't mean to do that. And there you go. A simple logo made. Krita makes it really that easy. So Krita makes things completely easy. I love Krita. Krita is probably one of my favorite pieces of software out there. It makes things very easy, makes things very streamlined, and there actually was a time not too long ago that it really wasn't all that streamlined. Like Krita was a strange piece of software, to say the least. It was bloated, it was buggy, it would crash a lot. There's been stories about how I've used Krita before and it just would crash on me all the time. But Krita these days is probably the best it's ever been, hands down. And if you want to use it, link to downloading it will be down below. If you're using Linux, I would highly recommend using the app image version of Krita right now, because right now the app images you can get are older versions. The latest version of Krita, from what I've tested, GMyQt does not work in it. If you try opening it, the entire thing crashes. So if you want to use GMyQt, you need to use an older version. But otherwise, Krita can be used for free, completely free, 100%. No subscriptions, nothing like that. And I plan on doing more videos on creating on Linux, because I've been trying to do it for so long, and I think I finally found a workflow that works best for me. And I want to do more videos on it, so you'll be seeing more videos of that in the future, where I'm teaching you how to software you can use and what distributions I would recommend using, because there's a whole lot of Linux distributions that all have different things that help you. And yeah, but I think that's probably gonna be for this video. So if you enjoyed this video, then giving it a big fat like. And if you would like to see more of this, and you would like to see more of me talk, which I don't know why anyone would, but if you want to see more of me, I stream on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 6:03 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, we talk about all pressing matters of the world, and yeah, if you want to see more of me, links to that will be down below. We also have a Discord where we call the Spurgian Empire, because I'm very big with Civ 6, and is something that I would like to grow a little bit more and chat with you more and be more involved with the community. So if you like that, that'll be down below anyway too. Anyway, thank you for joining me for this one, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.